What's up, guys? It's me, Gray Wolf, back here to do another video for you. Today I finally finished my high current LiPo Discharger, and I'm going to show it to you guys. So here it is. So here's what it looks like, basically. I'll explain it all here in a second. So these are the breakers that control how much amperage it pulls out of the LiPo. These back two are basically the same, and the front one has an extra resistor attached to it, so it's a little bit more of an amp draw. It's roughly, these two are roughly 35 amps a piece, and this one's roughly 45 amps on a full LiPo charge. I mean, as the voltage on the LiPo goes down, of course the amp draw is going to go down. These are intake fans. These are blowing straight across the resistors and the cooling plates. Oh, my hot glue came undone there. That was hot glued right there, but anyway. And then of course I got a big exhaust fan that's pulling air out of the case. Both the fans, or I should say all three of the fans, plus this this volt amp meter, watt meter, whatever you want to call it, which this is the LCD display to the watt meter. But the watt meter, the LCD display, and all three of the fans are all powered by this LiPo over here. And it's only a 1300 milliamp 3S LiPo, but 1300 amps should power this thing for at least 45 minutes. And I have two more of those 1300 milliamp batteries if I should need them. And I apologize because I feel like it's kind of dark out here, even though it's midday. So at any rate, I've got all the electronics except for the battery stuff wired up to this switch. All the battery current draw comes through these breakers here. So if I power that on, you can see my fan fires up there. Fans on the back are running, and my watt meter is running. Now this is not an RC watt meter, this is just a general watt meter, so it took me a little bit to figure out how to hook it up. This is basically all the control, all the components, and this is basically just a readout. So let me hook up a battery. In fact, the battery that we're going to be using is this Pro Match Racing 2S 8000 milliamp hour 150C battery. It says 150C, but my ESR meter says it's more like 16C. But even at 16C, this thing should be able to handle up to 125, 130 amps continuous. So we'll see what it's going to do. It's fully charged right now. So let me hook it up and we'll see what happens. And this will be a test for these Dean's connectors too. These are the new Dean's connectors that are supposed to be higher temp. We'll see if they can handle it. I've got a infrared temp gun here, and we'll see what happens. I got a ammo can standing by should we need it. Hopefully we won't, but I'll be right back. Alright, we're back. I got the LiPo hooked up, and as you can see, it's charged to 8.3 volts, which is a full charge on this guy. This is pretty cool. I can go into this menu here, which not only shows me the voltage and the amp draw, but it also shows me the amp hours, watt hours, the time it's running. The other cool thing about this watt meter too is it has a temperature probe built into it, which I've got sitting right in the middle of all those resistors. So as you can see right now, we're sitting at 24C. Unfortunately, there's no way to change that to Fahrenheit, but oh well. So let's give it a try here. I mean, I've already tested this, but so I'm going to turn on the first one, And as you can see, we start pulling 40 plus amps immediately. The second one would jump up to 70 plus, and the third one is now on, and now we're at about 100 amps. And I am going to try to discharge this down to 3.2 volts per cell on full blast, and we'll see what happens here. I also want to keep an eye on the temps. I apologize for the lack of lighting out here. It's really overcast today, and it's only like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't think you can even see that on camera, but right now that connector is sitting at about 107 degrees. We're down to about 7 volts and about 85 amps. These leads coming off the LiPo are warm. The LiPo itself is just barely warm. Those leads are pretty warm. The connector is about as warm as the leads. This area here is about as warm. But this here and this here is 10 gauge wire. This 8 gauge wire is not nearly as warm. These 8mm bullet connectors, they're a little warm, but they're not terrible. And of course the wires all the way back here, just they're their normal temperature. Let's check the Dean's connector again. $137. That's not terrible. I'm not going to be worried about that Dean's connector unless it gets up to maybe 150 or so. We're down to 6.9 and 82 amps. Looks like the internals are at about 36C. This is cool too because this watt meter I can actually set, like I've got the capacity for the battery set at 8,000 milliamp hours, which is, you know, what the pack is. So it shows me how much charge is left in the battery. So here's temp reading again. So now the Dean's is up to 150. The 8 gauge wire on the battery side is sitting at about 136. $125 on the other side. We've only got about 0.4 of a volt to go before I cut it off. However, this is an 8,000 milliamp pack, so it may take a few minutes to get through that. 0.4 volts. Hopefully, in the meantime, this Dean's connector holds. $165 degrees on the Dean's connector. That sucker is warm. Actually, it's hot. It's borderline hot. I can hold on to it for, well, let's see, about that long. It is getting toasty. I wouldn't say it's getting close to failing though. It's got 162.8. I think that last one was, oh shit, we're down past the mark, so we're going to kill this. And that voltage dropped fast there at the end. I did not even see that. And this pack is hot, and it's actually puffed. It actually had a slight puff to it before I started, but now it's very puffed. Now, that's probably my fault. You can probably see how puffed this is now. Some of that's probably my fault. It was slightly puffed in the first place, which is why I used it. I was trying to see if we could get it to actually go up. Doesn't look like it's going to, but it is definitely hot. Well, it's real warm. Yeah, 128 degrees. When I actually use this for doing the battery tests and stuff, I will be using a, you know, one of those standalone low voltage alarms set to 3.2 volts per cell, just so this kind of thing does not happen. Or as soon as it dips below that, I can shut it off and hopefully not damage the batteries. That's what I'm hoping, but we'll see exactly what happens. I took IR readings on this LiPo because one of the cells was damaged. The first cell was like at 2.3 milliohms and the second cell was at, I want to say 3 point something. I know it was 3 point something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I've got it written downstairs. I'm going to go, once this battery cools off and it doesn't look like it's going to puff anymore, I'm going to go charge it up and see what the IR readings are now. But we went down a little under 3 volts per cell. I'll have to go back and look at the video footage to see. I know it was 5.8 or 5.9 something that it was down to at one point. I've read that the LiPos don't really start taking a lot of damage until about 2.6 volts per cell. Some people say 2.8. But we didn't go too much below 3, so hopefully, well, it obviously damaged it. I mean, you can see it puffed, so I don't know. We'll see when I do the IR test after I recharged it, you know, where we're at with that. But anyway, I hope that was cool for you guys. I know this has been a long time in the making for me. I've been working on this off and on for 2 or 3 months now, and it finally works. Peace. So I just wanted to interject at the end of this video because I didn't think of this stuff when I was recording the actual test. I just wanted to let you guys know that battery, I have no idea the history on that battery. That battery is something that I got as part of an online deal where, you know, the guy was basically, he was selling a kit with a motor and a battery and a couple other things, and I didn't have any interest in anything but the kit. But the price he was asking for the kit, like, I would have paid that for just the kit anyway. So the only thing I know about that battery is the IR of the individual cells before we did this test. I don't have any idea how old that battery is. Well, and I know it was puffed a little bit already, slightly. But I have no idea how old it is, how many cycles are on it, or any of that kind of stuff. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that the new Dean's connectors, at least the genuine Dean's connectors, at least the new ones, can definitely withstand 80 amp discharge for at least several minutes. I mean, it withstood it the whole time we cycled that battery. And you know, if it had to keep going, like if I was discharging I don't know, let's say a 15 or a 20,000 milliamp hour battery, okay, maybe they would fail eventually. But I mean, that was an 8,000 milliamp hour battery that we depleted, and the Dean's connectors didn't fail at 80 amps. So this whole, whatever camp you fall into in terms of how much amperage Dean's connectors can handle, some people will say 45, some people say 60. It's obviously higher than that. The connector did get very warm. I had a 167 degree reading at one point, but it never came unsoldered, did not melt. I've already inspected it, and the connector's good. In fact, I'll show you guys that there is no damage to these Dean's connectors. Oops. Not used to using this camera. And even on the other side, it's not melted. So I would say as long as those connectors never went over 170, 180 degrees, I don't think they would have failed. That being said, would I want to run much more than 80 amps through them for any period of time continuous? No. And I'm not trying to say that EC5s and XT90s and all those aren't more capable. They probably are. In fact, it'll be kind of interesting as I do these battery tests, because some of them will have the different various connectors on them, like XT90s and EC5s. So we'll get to see those in action as well, and along with some more Dean's connectors. And I'll keep temps of the connectors themselves too, so we can get an idea of, you know, how each connector is faring. That being said, in terms of the Dean's being at 150 to 167 degrees Fahrenheit, I got a couple different readings in there, and it seemed to go back and forth. I don't know, maybe I was holding it a little crooked on one or two of those, but whatever that temperature ended up being, I can tell you this: the 8mm bullet connectors on the back side were very warm as well. In fact, I never did a temp reading on them. I should have. I didn't think to, but I would guarantee that those were at least 130 plus degrees as well, because they were very warm to the touch. So even 8mm bullet connectors will get very warm under an 80 to 100 amp load. So I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. We'll see how the numbers all play out as I do these battery tests. I got everything ready except for now that I've got a working data logger, I want to get that up and running and learn how to use that so I can graph these discharges, because that'll give us some more insight into these batteries as well. So anyway, once again, I'm out.